Story 1. I'm a retired, mid-60s, white female who needed gas last Monday before I ran my errands. I stopped at a station near my house that doesn't have a large lot, so parking and turning are cramped. I pulled up to a pump after circling the station twice looking for an opening. Once I got out of the car, I heard someone honking behind me and see a young man, also white, about 35, in a big white truck, parked vertically behind me near the curb. When I got to the pump, he yelled at me, "Didn't you see I was in line for that pump?" I said no and continued to try and put my card in the reader. He had startled me. He called me a bitch and told me he was in line. I repeated I didn't realize he was in line, and that's when the SHT hit the fan. His next words were screaming, "You're too f.ng old to be out in public. You should be at home waiting to die, you f.ng a-hole." The next 10 to 15 minutes he never shut up about how old I was and what a f.ng a-hole I was. Over and over again and again. He did pull his truck away from the curb and get behind me in line. At this point he told in a slightly lower tone than a scream that I had better hurry the fuck up. I didn't respond. He repeated it. I said I was retired. I didn't have to hurry up. He said it again. At this point, I was done him, and I told him, "Oh, I'm so old, my back is bad, and my hip and shoulders. It'll take me 30-35 minutes to finish pumping the little bit of gas I need. You had better start looking for another pump, because you will never get this one." Well, he did look for another pump, but he backed into the same pump as me, on other side, and continued to scream and curse me out for another 5 minutes. When he screamed ugly something about my mom, I told him his mother had certainly raised a complete foo.ng a-hole. At this point he told me to suck a dick. I laughed at him and said not bloody likely. A few points I would like to make. I really didn't see him waiting for the pump. I thought he was parked to the side waiting on someone to come out of the store. If he had not immediately started screaming and cursing at me, I might have moved. While I wasn't scared and was kind of amused at his childish hissy fit, I tried not to respond to his accusations. I'd why he thought I had no business in public. I'm older. Maybe he hates his grandmas. I was not afraid. There were at least 20 people at the station, and we were the center of attention. He was loud af. I'm also Irish and Scottish, so it's sorta like picking a fight with a honey badger. You might win, but I'm gonna do some damage. I was playing with him and seeing just how worked up I could get him. He's never gonna get to retire. His blood pressure and anger issues are going to take him out before he's 50. After I finished pumping, I slowly got into my car, buckled my seat belt, turned up my radio, and slowly drove off with him screaming obscenities at me the whole time. I never looked back at him. Story 2. My state has a stand your ground law, which means if you feel that your life or someone else's life is in danger, you have the right to defend yourself. This is one story I don't often tell, but I feel the need to talk about it. I legally carry a Glock 19, a 9mm pistol. The main reason I do is because my city has a very high crime rate. When I got my permit, I never thought I'd actually have to use my firearm in any way, shape, or form. Better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it, kind of deal. Well, one day I had just finished shopping at my local Walmart and was unloading things into my car, which I had just bought the week before. It's a 2018 Honda Civic Sport, not the fanciest car in the world, but my mechanic friend and I tweaked it a bit, so it looks decent and sporty. As I was loading my things, a man approached me. He was the gym rat type, but a little older, maybe in his late 30s, extremely muscular, about 6 feet tall. I, myself, am 20, 6'4", and fairly toned, but not bulky. So, he walked up to my car with the most obnoxious grin I've ever seen and started asking me about it. I told him some of the stuff I'd done to it. It's really not that special, just a bit faster than stock. And he asked if he could buy it off me for his son, who was about to turn 16. Here's how the conversation went. Entitled Dad: "So, bro, have you ever thought about selling it?" Me: "Not really, I just bought it last week, so I don't really want to." Entitled Dad: "Darn, bro, I was gonna ask if I could buy it off you. My son turns 16 soon, and I want to give him a cool car like yours. Me, sorry, dude. I can't just sell it. Then I'd have no car. Entitled Dad, come on, man, I'll give you a good price. How does $10,000 sound? Keep in mind, it's a $23,000 car stock. Me, like I said, man, no sale, especially with a lowball like that. I chuckle. At this point, Entitled Dad started to get visibly angry, and I just wanted to go home. Entitled Dad, you call that a lowball, dude? This car isn't worth more than that no matter what you do to it. I need this car for my son, man. Me, the answer's no, get lost. At this point, I opened my door to get in, and Entitled Dad grabbed my left arm, which probably saved my life and my car since my pistol is holstered on my right hip, and pinned my body against my car. Entitled Dad, in that sort of whisper-yelling tone, no one tells me no. Now you're going to give me this car, or I'm going to take it from you, wimp. I could see the rage in his eyes, so I quickly moved my right hand to my holster and drew my pistol. Me, get off me right now. If you saw my Chipotle post, this is me using the terrifying voice that the military has given me. I now had my pistol pressed against his head, and I knew that if he didn't let go, I would have to use force. He slowly let go and took a small step back. I still had my weapon drawn, and it was still pointed at him, but my finger was now off the trigger. Keep in mind, this all happened in a matter of seconds. Entitled Dad, looking out the corner of his eye at the gun pressed against his head, all right, man, you drive a hard bargain, he said with his hands raised slightly. Me, now turn around and walk away. Now. He turned and walked away like nothing happened, and even had the nerve to say, have a good one, bro. I reholstered my pistol, got in my car, and started to drive off. But I parked in the next parking lot to calm down. It's a terrifying thing to have to draw a weapon on someone, and I hope no one ever has to do it themselves. But I will always fight for what is mine. And to be honest, this guy is very lucky I have great discipline, because if it had been anyone else who was carrying, he could have been dead in that parking lot. With the security cameras, it would have been justified. And to this guy's kid, I say this, but honestly, I think he was just trying to rob me. I hope your inconsiderate dad found a car for you and didn't hurt anyone to get it. I really like this subreddit because I have so many encounters with entitled parents that I can finally share, and that makes me really happy. If you guys want to hear more, let me know. So, in conclusion, don't try to force someone to give you something, because you never know how they're going to fight back. Story 3. So I'm a 21-year-old female. My parents are both white. They have kids and me as number 6. They adopted my little brother and I when we were babies. My brother and I are mixed, but what some call light-skinned black. Anyway, this story happened when I was in elementary school. Some backstory to help you understand my family. Being black and having white family, plus growing up in a white area was challenging. Like my brother, and I had swim passes, so sometimes my mom would drop us off at the pool, and my dad would pick us up and frequently would be stopped and asked for proof he was our dad. It also didn't help that my mom was 48 when I was adopted, having her last kid at 40. With that, my oldest brother is 20 years older than me, so I have a nephew who is only a year younger than me, and a month younger than my little brother. We get weird looks when we are out in public with my brother, and I calling my mom, Mom, and my nephew calling her Grandma. So a lot of times people thought my older siblings thought my sisters were my mom. Okay, now you're all caught up. In elementary school, my mom worked as a Title I teacher, which basically means she goes to class to help kids read. She still does this and did the whole time my brother and I were in school. Most of my friends knew I was adopted. Figured they probably just asked their parents why I looked different. Well, one day when I was about in 4th grade, my mom came to class. It was the first time for the school year, so people didn't know she was my mom. I had a bad headache, so when she came in, I was relieved and shouted excitedly, "Mommy, can I have some medicine?" Some kids looked confused, but before I could. For example, the entitled kid stated, "Sometimes when a white woman and black man make a baby, it comes out black." I was shocked, and as a little kid, I didn't know how to respond, so I didn't. I went over to my mom, and she gave me medicine she had in her bag. Cue the entitled kid. I need some medicine too. My mother explained to her that she couldn't give her medicine because it was against school policy, and she could give me medicine because she was my mom. She rolled her eyes and huffed back to her desk. We thought that was the end of it till the next morning. Each morning all the Title I aides would meet up in the library to organize their stuff and chit-chat. I would come and sit with them a lot because I would get back earaches from being outside. That's when the entitled mother comes in. You must be the N-word lover. All the aide teachers' mouths dropped. I didn't know what that word meant at the time, but I could tell it was bad because of everyone's face. My mother told her not to use that language in front of me. The entitled mother rolled her eyes and began to demand to know why she wouldn't give her daughter some medicine if she was giving me some. My mother explained again. Then the entitled mother said, "So because you chose a N-word and made a child, they get medical help over my baby." I could see my mother getting upset. Again, if you continue to use that language, I'll have to get the principal involved. The entitled mother smiled. Fine, let's do it. My mother and the entitled mother left, and I did not understand what's going on, so I called my dad and told him what happened. Now my mom is the nice, soft-spoken type. My dad, on the other hand, had an intense resting brat face, and when angry is angry. So my dad told me he was on his way. I waited in the front office for my parents. My dad got to the school before my mom came out and knocked on the door. Principal opened the door and the lady saw my dad. When seeing my dad, my mom said, "What are you doing here, hun?" The entitled mother's face looked like she had seen a ghost. So is her daddy the milkman? Again, I didn't know what that meant, but I could tell by my dad's face. He was not happy. The entitled mother said, "How else would she look like that?" Gesturing at me, then turning to the principal. "I mean, she obviously isn't a good example for the children, so you should fire her for the children's sake." My dad started laughing, which I knew wasn't a good sign when he was mad. He told me to go find my brother and get my stuff, then they closed the door. The bell had rang already, so the front desk lady gave me a note, and I went to my brother's class and got him. We both agreed to be on our best behavior since Dad was mad. We sat on the bench waiting, then my parents came out. "Are you fired, Mom?" I asked. Then my mom smiled. "Of course not, but we are going home for today to talk." Sweet. Ditch day? My parents took us to Denny's for breakfast since we missed it because our school provided it. They explained to us that some people don't like the color of our skin, and that it was never okay for us to be called that. We got to stay home. The next day I noticed the entitled kid was moved to another class and found out the entitled mother was kicked out of the Parents-Teacher Association. Edit: I married a white man. He served an LDS mission to New Zealand and the Cook Islands. Surprisingly, we were asked a lot if he brought me back from his mission. People are always asking me where I'm from. Well, we have a son, and he looks just like his dad, but has my curls, so I get funny looks a lot and people are always surprised I'm his mom. I've never had that intense racism till I was older, but I had the small things here and there. I've been told I talk and act like a white woman, not sure what that means. But when I say I was adopted and show a family picture, it seems to help make sense to people. Story 4. So this happened back in January 2018, so my memory may be a bit fuzzy. So I am a 23-year-old man who usually visits my parents and siblings for Christmas and New Year's, because that's the only time I can see them. So I am in the airport waiting to board my flight as I see a woman getting angry because her kids were tired and wanted to get on the plane. I think nothing of it and hope she's not sitting near me. Note she was at my gate. As I was approaching my seat, an aisle seat in business class, because I knew it would be smarter than asking people to stand up so I can get to the bathroom when I get to my seat, I see one mother and two kids, one in my seat. I tell the mother, "That's my seat." She is visibly pissed at that statement and snaps back, "No, it's not," which, me, not wanting to have a fight on a plane, grabs the attention of a flight attendant and I show her my boarding pass, so the flight attendant asks her to move from my seat politely. And as if being asked to move the seat by hand, Karen in a raised voice says, "This is my seat, I paid for it, so get lost." The flight attendant, still being polite, asks to see the boarding passes to check the seats. The entitled mother pulls two out for the seats next to mine. The flight attendant, slightly less kind now, says, "Ma'am, these are only 2 boarding passes, where is the third one?" The mother, thinking she's smart, says, "I must have dropped the third one, so I can't give it to you." So this causes me to butt into the conversation and say that I have the boarding pass for that seat because it's my seat. The look on her face, you would have thought I slapped her kid and called her a witch, because she then shouts, "Give me my boarding pass, you witch." The next part was back and forth arguing, which I can barely remember, but from what I do, it was the flight attendant saying that I clearly paid for this seat as it had my name on the boarding pass, and her arguing for a few more minutes before stopping grinning, and she said, "Well, if you want me to move so bad, how about you pay to upgrade me and my children to first class?" I responded by saying, "Miss, I only have a business class seat because I do a trip like this once a year, so I tend to be comfortable during my flight, and I don't have the funds for 3 first-class tickets." The flight attendant then says to the Karen, "Either you or one of your children will have to move, or else we will have to remove you from the flight." Then, without holding back, she screeches, "If I leave, he's going to touch my babies." Me and the flight attendant are physically taken aback after hearing this. After that, I stopped trying to be nice and responded, "Get out of my seat and never make those claims again, you self-centered witch." The flight attendant tries to calm me down and calls for security. In the end, the Karen and her children were escorted off the flight, and I got a row to myself. Fair enough. Story 5. A little note. My first language isn't English, so I apologize if I make any mistakes with grammar. I will keep the story free from any strong language, but please assume the worst possible intention behind all the mild words. Backstory. I live in Venice, yes, that Venice, Italy, and I'm quite accustomed to the general rudeness of tourists, who seem to view the city as a big amusement park, rather than a real city where people need to live and work. Not all of them are uncivilized troublemakers, but you don't really notice the good ones because they actually behave like decent human beings and show respect. One day, I was out with a long-term friend who now lives in Florence, along with her nephews, in a square. It's a common thing for children to hang out, play together while the parents chat, and everyone keeps an eye on the kids, even those that aren't their own. We were catching up when something quite typical happened. Sometimes, though it's becoming rarer due to scenes like the one I'm about to describe, elderly people come, sit on benches, and simply enjoy the kids' company, the pleasant weather, and the fact that, for a few hours, they aren't alone at home. This particular man, well known by everyone, is like the neighborhood grandpa. He's a sweet old man with a cane who sometimes sits on the bench and hands out candy to the children. He's alone in the world. I've exchanged a few words with him, and staying at home makes him sad and lonely. The kids know him, the parents know him, and when he sits down, a flock of children always gathers around him, and the exchange goes something like this. Grandpa: "Hi, sweetie, how are you?" Kid: "Good, thanks. May I have a candy?" Grandpa: "Yes, but is your mother or father okay with that? Go ask them." The child then goes to ask the parent, and with their approval, comes back and gets the sweet. He does this every time because he wants to teach the kids not to accept anything without asking their parents first. On this particular day, there were a lot of children playing, along with some tourists. The residents all know each other, so it's easy to spot someone who isn't from around here. Among them was a family of 5 occupying an entire bench with their backpacks and bags. Coincidentally, it was the bench where Grandpa usually sits, but when he arrived, he didn't mind. He hobbled over, slow and unsteady with his cane, to another bench. I thought it was a bit rude, but since not many people needed the bench's parents usually stand while talking, it wasn't a big deal. Or so I thought. I was wrong. When Grandpa sat down, the children, as usual, went to him and asked for candy. He proceeded as always, and the kids returned to their parents, who laughed a little and said yes. One child, in particular, asked for 2 candies, which was unusual. Grandpa asked why, and the boy, pointing to his visibly pregnant mother, said it was for his brother. Grandpa laughed and gave him 3 candies. The boy looked at them, took a moment, he was around 3 or 4 years old, and then said, "This isn't right. These aren't 2 candies," and gave one back. The old man was baffled but smiled and said, "Sorry, you're right, I didn't count well." The mother beamed with pride as the son returned and handed her a candy for his brother in the belly, choosing his favorite one because his brother should taste the best sweet. I don't particularly like children, but I have to admit, this melted my heart. Everyone saw the interaction, even the tourists, who remarked on how cute the kid was and how he brought the candy to his baby brother. It was obvious what he was doing, pointing at his mother's belly and all. Even the bench hoarders saw this. I noticed the mother pointing at the old man and presumably telling her children to go and get a candy. This wasn't strange. Some kids are more introverted or shy, so parents often encourage them by saying, "It's okay, you can go." But, oh no, I was wrong again. The 3 children, who appeared to range from 5 to 10 years old, approached and asked for sweets in English from an old Italian man. The guy looked a bit lost, but he wasn't stupid. He pointed at the candy, the children nodded, and he pointed to their mother, making gestures like, "Is it okay?" But they didn't understand. They asked again in English, this time more demanding, but he didn't speak English, so he was really struggling. The mother was on her phone, and the father was nowhere to be seen. He had left when they arrived. Sighing, I stepped in. Language barriers are a common problem. I greeted the children and translated what Grandpa wanted to say. They looked offended and went back to their mother. I stayed and greeted him too, making small talk. I didn't think much of it because it's normal for children to go back and ask before accepting sweets from a stranger. Then the entitled mother approached, looking enraged, and started shouting at the old man. Entitled mother M. How dare you give my children the candies? Grandpa, in Italian, I don't understand. Me, in English, to her, ma'am, this gentleman doesn't speak English, so he can't. M, cutting me off, of course, he speaks English, everyone does, it's a universal language. I looked at her, a little taken aback. Universal? What? Where? When? How? Me. Well, it's a pretty common language, I'll give you that, but he's an old Italian man. I assure you he doesn't speak it. M. This is absurd. Givemykidscandies. She really articulated every word in the face of the old man, still shouting at him. He looked lost and also a little frightened. At this point, I put myself between this silly woman and Grandpa. Me. Please, stop screaming at him. What do you want? M. Are you foolish too? Candies? He has to give them to my children as well. They are feeling left out. It's discrimination. Me, ignoring the insult, sure thing. He doesn't have any problem with that. He just wants the kids to ask permission from their parent before taking sweets from him. M. Why does he need to bother me? Just give them the darn candies. Me. Because he is a stranger, and it's not safe teaching kids to accept sweets from strangers. M. This is nonsense. Give them the fudging candies. I huffed, realizing it was useless to argue. I quickly translated, and Grandpa, though a little upset, didn't want to punish the children for their mother's bad temper. He took out 3 candies and handed them over. She snapped. M. What are these? Me, a little confused. Candies. M. They aren't insert brand name, I don't remember. Everything that isn't insert brand name is useless garbage. Are you giving my precious kids garbage? Me, still confused. We don't have that brand here. The candies are the same for everyone. M. Why are you lying? Brand name is universal. Everyone knows it and has it. Another universal thing. Great. And here I thought there was so much difference between us. Apparently, a lot of things are universal. Me. Look, ma'am, this is what he has. He doesn't have branded candies, only the ones he handed you. M. Absurd. This is the worst service ever. I will complain. I still don't know what she was talking about. What service? Complain to whom? Maybe at the Universal Office of Complaints. She then tried to take the whole pack. I stopped her. Me. What are you doing? M. I'm taking the candies. Are you foolish? The other mom got them. The other mom? The pregnant one. Who got one? But of course, the entitled mother is more important, so she needs the whole pack. I let it slide as a lot of people were coming near. The shouting was hard to ignore. Some of the other tourists asked if everything was okay, and I simply shrugged. Me. Yes, this woman wants to steal candies from children, but other than that, it's a wonderful day. M. Looking even more furious. How dare you, you witch! Those candies belong to me. As compensation, he ruined our holiday. Everyone who could understand looked at her in awe. Me. Are you denser than the fog in autumn? He was giving away the candies to the children for free. He simply wanted them to ask before accepting from strangers. And I thought you said that brand was garbage, so why do you want them? M. Because they are mine, as compensation. I will throw them away to teach you all a lesson for disrespecting me and my kids. Note, throughout this, nobody said a word to her children. The oldest one looked so embarrassed and went back to sit on the bench, while the others went to play with the other kids again, without their mother supervising them. Me. Ma'am, were you dropped as a child? Please, stop harassing the old man and continue with your vacation. You're making a scene. M. Interrupting. Stop talking to me, you useless witch. I can sue you for defamation and trespassing. Young girl, this is a parent's spot. You don't belong here. Go away. Before I could respond with some colorful Italian phrases, my friend had a brilliant idea. She picked up one of her nephews, the little one, came over to me, and in English asked, "Friend, honey, is everything all right? The baby wants to go home." I smiled and immediately understood. Placing an arm around her waist, we've known each other since kindergarten, so we're like sisters and don't mind hugging or similar gestures. Me. Sure thing, sweetie. I was just finishing up talking to this rude lady. It looked like her brain just snapped. She opened and closed her mouth a few times, looking terrified, and then literally ran away, screaming something like indecent, disgusting same-gender scum, and depravity in front of children, while dragging her kids and an impossible amount of baggage out of sight. We laughed so hard and then explained the whole situation to everyone, who then laughed just as hard. The only one who was a little sad was Grandpa, because, in the end, he wasn't able to give the candies to the woman's children. Then the boy from earlier told him not to be sad because he would accept the candies. No problem at all. We laughed again. Story 6. My mom was an absolute drama queen over Thanksgiving. We are a military family, and my brother is too. He happens to be stationed in the same state as us, just 2.5 hours away. Ever since his wife and kids moved to Arizona, I have hosted Thanksgiving because they were a newly married couple and my sister-in-law had never prepared the meal for them before. They had lived with my parents before they moved. Anyway, since my brother moved to Arizona 4 or 5 years ago, I have taken on the responsibility of hosting Thanksgiving. This gathering has grown to include my best friend and her family, who are also in the military. My parents have attended once before, as they live in Florida. This year, my brother is deployed, so my parents came again to help my sister-in-law. Everyone was invited for Thanksgiving. My brother has 2 dogs and a cat, while we had 2 cats and a dog. My eldest cat, who would have been 14 in January, had a very malignant and aggressive form of cancer. We were scheduled to put him down the weekend after Thanksgiving. One of my brother's dogs is sweet, but not very bright. He steals food from people and off the table, and he's aggressive toward my dog and cats. He does not obey commands and is hyper and pushy. We are strict with him and don't let him get away with this behavior, and neither does my brother. But my sister-in-law has a hard time controlling him, given that she has 3 kids under 6. My brother has been gone for 6 months, and the dog is just not controlled. This is the setting for what happened. My parents arrived with my brother's oldest child and their calm dog a few days before Thanksgiving. My sister-in-law came down with the 3-year-old and 1-year-old, along with the hyper dog, on Thanksgiving evening. My entire family knows that our cat is very sick and will be put down in a week. They understand how attached my husband and I are to this cat, as he is older than our children. The troublesome dog, let's call him C-Boy, thinks he owns my home as soon as he walks in. He viciously attacks my dog, who is a boxer and wants to be best friends with everyone. These dogs know each other and visit often, but C-Boy needs extra time to settle down. We take turns kenneling my dog and C-Boy when we visit, so we lock my dog away until C-Boy can calm down. My mom prescribes him Benadryl to help him settle. Things calm down, and everyone is happy. We have our cat, M, stationed behind my husband's computer on a cat tree, where he is most comfortable. The cat food is placed high up in the tree, out of reach of the dogs. C-Boy decides he needs to squeeze into this space and attempts to climb the cat tree to get to the cat food. My sister-in-law scolds the dog and puts him in the kennel. My mom flips out and says we need to move the sick and dying cat. We respond with, "No, this is his home, and he doesn't need to move for an aggressive dog." My mom thinks that's ridiculous and gets upset. More Benadryl for C-Boy. On Thanksgiving Day, we have guests over, and it's their first time meeting my parents. My mom is stressed because there are 16 people, 9 of whom are kids, and 7 of those kids are small. I get it, Mom, I truly do. She refuses to help with a single thing to prepare food for this massive gathering. Fine, that's completely fine. She did an amazing job cleaning, and honestly, that is enough. However, C-Boy cannot handle all the cooking smells and the number of people. He starts jumping all over people and viciously attacking my dog again. Back to the kennel he goes, while the other 2 dogs stay outside. After some time, we put C-Boy outside and let the other 2 dogs inside. My mom thinks this is outrageous and lets C-Boy back inside. He immediately starts climbing the cat tree again to try and nab the food there. We grab him and put him back in the kennel. My mom flips out again and demands that I lock my dying cat away to make it easier for C-Boy. My husband and I insist that this will not happen under any circumstances. My sister-in-law agrees with us about keeping the dog in the kennel. My mom then spends all of Thanksgiving in the other room alone, crying. She refuses to speak with me and won't even look at me the entire day, including dinner. After our friend's family leaves, she calms down a bit. The extra family of 5 with young kids overwhelmed her. Fine. The next day rolls around, and my sister-in-law is leaving with her 3 kids and C-Boy. We keep C-Boy in the kennel or outside for most of the morning. For now, he is calmly snoozing away in the kennel. My mom is happily chatting with me in the kitchen. She then goes to check on C-Boy and starts shrieking for my dad, saying that C-Boy is dead in the kennel, he isn't breathing. My mom opens the kennel, and C-Boy gingerly gets up and waltzes right out of it. He immediately dives for the cat tree. My mom screams at me. "How much Benadryl are you giving him?" I reply, "0. My sister-in-law is giving it to him. He's not my dog." My sister-in-law is quickly packing things to leave. My husband jumps up to deter the dog, and C-Boy moves away. He quietly stays away but tries to sneak back. When he does, I snap my fingers, and he moves away again. We do this several times. When he starts inching toward the cat, I snap my fingers, and he backs away again. This was peaceful and wasn't bothering anyone. My mom, however, has had enough of this and loudly says to herself, "It is such a shame that that cat is out here. It is ruining the peace." At this point, my husband is fuming and leaves. I tell my mom that my cat will not be moved under any circumstances. She then turns to me and says, "Well, maybe we shouldn't have brought the dog." I reply, "Yeah, maybe you shouldn't have, like seriously, put him in a kennel." She then says, "Maybe next time I won't even come at all." I reply, "If that's how you feel, Mom, then don't." Then she says, "Next time maybe none of us will come at all." I reply again, "If that's how you feel, Mom." My sister-in-law then decides to leave my house within 5 minutes. To add, I will not block my mom out of my life. She is a hot mess sometimes, but I understand and forgive her. She has her moods. She is over 70 and raised 6 kids while working full-time night shifts to avoid childcare costs, while my dad worked over 60 hours a week. She is over large gatherings. I know that she put herself in this situation, but I don't really care. I know who she is, and I still welcomed her into my home and will continue to do so time and time again. This was just a rant about how she can be. She usually is difficult if we visit for more than a week, and this was a 2-week trip away from home with loads of kids and all the pets.